Blog Talk Radio.
Well, good afternoon, fellow constitutionalists, and welcome to the Free-for-All Friday edition of the Dan Clements Show. I'm your host, Dan Clements, your constitutional warrior, fighting for your right just to be an American. It is September 29th in the year of our Lord 2017. Remember, we're a hyphen-free, PC-free zone. God is still in control, and He does love you, and we do what we do here at the Dan Clements Show, knowing the fear of the Lord. We persuade folks of the truth. I'm broadcasting live from the Hemlock Studios in the cool central Susquehanna Valley in the great Keystone State. And this morning the temperature was like refrigerator temperature. It was like 45 degrees outside this morning. When I went for my water therapy this morning, it was on the brisk side for me. Didn't used to be that way, but as I get older and I have more infirmities, it seems like I mind the cold a little bit more. All right, I have a good show set up for you today. If I want to apologize ahead of time if my voice cracks a little bit or I sound kind of stuffy. I don't know where I got it from, but from yesterday afternoon on, I got a full-blown head cold. And I'm just going to try to suffer through it on the show. Hopefully you won't notice it, but I do apologize ahead of time for that. I'm still having a problem with my chat room over in Blog Talk Radio. It will not open in my studio for whatever reason, and my Flash player and everything is totally up to date. So I think it's on their end, and that's why. So I'm going to be flopping back and forth between my chat room and my studio, so I can just keep track of time on that. YouTube's up, the chat's up in YouTube. Hopefully everybody's had a good week this week. This has been Fair Week here. A lot of folks talking about the fair. A lot of folks still talking about the NFL. And I have to admit, I watched my Green Bay Packers last night because I was not going to let this ruin my enjoyment of watching one of the sports that I love, and I don't watch all that often. And so I wasn't going to let this, I wasn't going to die on this hill of the national anthem here. And I was talking to some of the men at the swim pool this morning at the Y, and I told him that, I watched the game, and, I'm never watching the NFL again. If they don't have respect for our country to stand up for the national anthem, then I'm not going to watch them. I said, well, that's your choice. But, and I told him about what I talked about on the show yesterday about, is this the hill you really want to die on? I mean, where did you stand on Michael Vick with the dog fighting and, the animal cruelty charges and stuff like that? And I still think he should have been banned totally from the NFL, but he was forgiven, and he's playing, and he's a good quarterback, no question about it, but he was forgiven. The domestic violence, the hiding of the concussion issue in the NFL, the drug and alcohol abuse that's rampant in the NFL, all these other issues I think that are a more graver sin than someone kneeling down, for the national anthem. And you heard me talk about it all week. that I think these multimillionaire players are being cheapskates and protesting on somebody else's dime, and it's hurting. It's hurting the business. Again, DirecTV and the Sunday NFL Ticket, they're refunding. Folks are burning their jerseys, which I think that's foolish, but it's up to them to do that. I think a better gesture than burning their jerseys and stuff like that would be take a video of them throwing them into the Goodwill or the Salval. Let somebody get some. If you don't want them anymore, let somebody get some use out of them. Some clothing and that. And I think that would be a better, more significant gesture than sitting there and destroying thousands of dollars of memorabilia because you don't agree with what some players are doing on the field. And you heard I voiced my opinion earlier this week. I think that's a workplace issue. I don't think they should be doing it there. They come to play football, not politics. I turn on football not to watch politics, but to watch football. And last night, I had fun. It's the first game I watched all year because if you don't know it already, I don't have cable TV. And they're just slowly starting to bring games to different apps. Amazon Prime is in a deal with CBS Sports, and they're live streaming their Thursday Night Football with commercials and everything else in it. I love it. And I think you're going to see this more and more as the days go by. They got to get a bigger audience. And if TV isn't where it's at, they're going to have to do something with apps, and they might partner with like Netflix and Amazon and Hulu to get this done. So I'm actually looking forward to that. I don't mind suffering through the commercials, and so that's bring it on as far as I'm concerned. But there are people out there still mad, and there's some people out there that do not understand my position on it. Okay, I think I'm coming from a standpoint of freedom. I served this country in the armed forces for 7 years, the Navy for 4 and 3 years in the Army National Guard, and I didn't serve in the armed forces so that some Americans can try to take away the freedom of expression or freedom of speech from some other Americans. I may not agree with what you're doing or what you're saying, but I'll defend to the death you saying it as far as free speech. Now, that only goes so far. Folks like Black Lives Matter and Antifa causing destruction and harm and voicing out threats against people, that's not free speech. That's terroristic threats. And there's laws against that, and they need to be dealt with. This isn't in my articles, but there was a police officer who brought a lawsuit against Black Lives Matter, and the federal judge says, well, you can't sue them because they're a social group. Excuse me? Hopefully it goes above this judge. This judge, and I don't have his name, I just saw it on the news this morning. This judge, I think, was totally wrong. Black Lives Matter is not just a social group. They are a domestic terrorist organization because of their antics at protest. And there was, lest we forget, what about that shooter in Dallas that took out the police officers? He was a member of Black Lives Matter. That doesn't sound like a social group to me. And if it is, I don't want them anywhere near me, because if that's being social, I'd hate to see what being radical and unsocial is like. if the behavior of the Black Lives Matter is considered social, I'd hate to see unsocial activity. But there's again, I think we need to pick our battles, and this ain't one of them, as far as I'm concerned. And the other thing was, a lot of people didn't know this. I told the guys in the pool today, I said, did you know the Department of Defense, the Pentagon, has been paying the NFL for years, since the 60s, to make sure they put on the national anthem and have these military vets in there and also the military in there, military honor guard and stuff like that in there to promote the military and everything and to promote patriotism. And I asked the guy in the pool, I says, to me, that sounds like forced patriotism to me. If it was something that was natural, that came up naturally, that people said, hey, wouldn't it be a nice thing if we honor our country and we honor our military that defends our freedoms, if we started doing the national anthem here, whether the audience sang it or it was sung to them in a band or whatever, if that came up and sprung up naturally, wouldn't that be better? I think the more people to find out that the NFL is being paid to do this, I think they're going to, hopefully, like me, they're going to be more disgusted to find out that taxpayer dollars is being spent to promote patriotism. I don't want to have a false patriotism, just like I don't want to have a false Christianity. I want to make sure what I'm doing as a Christian is according to the Bible. And if it's not, I don't need to adjust the Bible, and that's what too many people do. You know, they adjust what the Bible says to fit what they want. I never want that. I want to adjust my narrative, my life's narrative, to fit the Bible. And I don't want to be forced to do it. Just like I don't need to have the anthem and the flag and honoring the military shoved down my throat. You know, with these displays that are being paid for. And again, do you really want to die on this hill when there's so many other sins that the NFL is committing? A friend of mine I won't say his name, but he redid a song, a Merle Haggard song, and he put new words to it. I just want to see. I commented on his on the video, and I put a comment up there. And I'm not sure if he commented back yet. I'm just going to check that real quick here. Again, I won't use his name or anything like that, but let's see here. No, he didn't get back with me on that. That's fine. I don't. You know, he may be working right now. I'm not sure, and. So, it's, again, it amazes me the hills people want to die on and forget about the other hills. And one of the biggest ones I see is the domestic violence. The domestic violence that goes on. You have these brutes, these athletes that are in training, weight training and physical training and stuff like that, and they're slapping around their significant others or their wives. And yet, we want to defend them. We want to defend them because they're our favorites. You know, like Ben Roethlisberger. I know a lot of Steelers around here that was making excuses for him. And he was making excuses. There's no excuse. There's no excuse. You're not a man if you go around hitting women. I don't care how famous you are. That's a hill worth dying on, protecting women. It really is. That's a hill to actually be dying on. I did one more thing. Like I said, a couple of these things are not in my show notes, but I did see them on the news this morning. And a lot of times, like One American News Network, their online website is behind what they're actually reporting. I don't know if you've seen it in the news or not. The Illinois governor of Illinois, and like I said, I don't have the article, so I don't have his name, and this just popped in my head. You know, as far as hills to die on, he signed into legislation as if. And folks, let me back this up a little bit. The state of Illinois is bankrupt. They have no more money, and yet their House. The representatives or senators in Illinois thought it was a good idea to pass a bill for the state to pay for people's abortion, using taxpayer dollars to pay for women's abortions, and the governor signed it into law. That's a hill to die on. If you want to die on a hill, that would be a hill to die on. That would absolutely be a hill to die on, to protect the unborn lives of babies in the womb. And again, compare that with football players, pampered, spoiled football players, kneeling during the national anthem. Which one would you rather go to the hill and die for? You know, to climb that mountain, to charge up that hill. I know which one I would. Drug and alcohol abuse. And this is, folks, this is no different than these Hollywood folks, like Lindsay Lohan's the best example I can think of. Just because she's famous, it seemed like every time she did something wrong, she just got a slap on the wrist. If you and I did what half, or not even half, a tenth, or 1% of what Lindsay Lohan was arrested for, we'd probably still be cooling our heels in the Hooskow. Because we're not famous. There is a double standard in this country. There really is. And, I'm sorry to say that this double standard sometimes actually affects, the rest of us, and not just the oppressed. And the problem, real quick here, I have an article here I do want to get to today that I think is really good. It's by Walter E. Williams, and he talks about the problem of today's black Americans. And I do want to get that into the show. I got a few more things I just want to mention in passing before I get down there to that article. But, it's there. My dad told me something years ago that the only person that's going to get in the way of my success is me. And it doesn't matter what anybody else does. I'm the only one that can stop me from being successful, however I define that success. And I apply this to everybody. The only person that gets in the way of your success is you. If you allow outside forces to bring you down, that's still your choice. You're the one still getting in the way of your own success. And I use Walter E. Williams because he comes from a one-parent family. His mom raised him. And he put himself through school. And he's had a wonderful career. And a wonderful marriage, has some wonderful children. And he's still putting columns out. I love Walter E. Williams. And he would tell you the same thing, that the only person stopping you from being a success is yourself. And so if there is oppression, and it's not that I'm blind to it. I don't see it around here. And it's not that I'm not looking for it. In my area, I don't see it. I don't see it. And if I do, I will stand shoulder to shoulder with those that are being oppressed. But I'm also going to encourage them, don't let this stop you. Don't let this turn you bitter. Turn it into a positive. And this is the message that these national football players are taking a knee from Kaepernick on down. If there's oppression going on out there, go and fight it. I don't see you doing that. All I see you doing is using somebody else's dime, like the NFL airtime that's supposed to be used to broadcast sports. I see you stealing from your employers by doing this because it distracts from the game totally. Like I said, I tuned in to watch a football game to watch sports, or NASCAR, or baseball, or basketball, whatever the sport is you like, or hockey. I don't want to see a political protest. It's not the proper place for that. It's not the proper venue, especially when you're not paying for the airtime. To me, that's more egregious than the players that are taking a knee because they're stealing from somebody else. Honestly, folks, when I was watching the game last night, I tuned in just before the national anthem, or just as it was getting started. And what was running through my mind, are these guys going to kneel during the national anthem, or are they going to lock arms? And they were locking arms, stand together. But they were standing for the national anthem. But that was in my mind, and it shouldn't have been. Like I said, I didn't tune in to watch the Packers stomp the snot out of the Chicago Bears, or as I tell my nephew, the Bears. I tuned in to watch them do that. I didn't tune in for the politics. But what was on my mind? The politics. And I know I wasn't the only one. But the politics were on my mind. They shouldn't have been. And it was a good game. I'm not going to lie to you. It was a good game. I thought Aaron Rodgers did a good job. I have no idea why the Bears even came, because it didn't even look like they were coming to play. What was it? Gannon was the quarterback name for the quarterback for the Chicago Bears. Looked terrible. Looked terrible. And you know what the problem was? They were down, and they have a backup quarterback that would actually probably, his style of play, the run and gun, the bootlegs and stuff like that, the options, would have fit better against Green Bay's defense. But they wouldn't put him in. They wouldn't put him in because he was not the marquee quarterback for the Bears. And the Bears, they had a graphic there of how many quarterbacks. What they did was they put the years up from Brett Favre, I think it was 1992 or something like that, up till today with Aaron Rodgers. And they put a scroll, and they literally had to scroll through this graphic of how many quarterbacks Chicago's had compared to the two quarterbacks that the Green Bay Packers had all these years since 1992. It was amazing. There was 10, 15 names on that list. You know, they can't get a good quarterback to save their hides. So I thought it was a good game. Now granted, towards the end, the Bears were making some. I think they finally got 14 points on the board altogether. But right in the beginning, in the first couple minutes, Green Bay jumped out to a 14-0 lead, and they're just, like I said, the Chicago Bears. They looked terrible. And then there was one incident in the fourth quarter where a Bears defensive player, one of the defensive backs, speared Packer on his way down the ground. A Chicago Bear had him wrapped up and they were going down, and he literally leaned his head down and hit him in helmet to helmet. His mouthpiece went flying and he was out cold. Now, luckily, everything's okay. They checked him out. They don't see any permanent damage. Of course, we don't know about, they're testing for concussions and everything, but he wasn't ejected from the game either. And you know what? He should have been escorted off the field. That was totally blatant. To me, it was totally blatant. I don't know if anybody else saw that. It was totally blatant. So, all right, enough of me ranting for today. I gotta rant some. All right, folks. One of our affiliate marketers on the Dan Clements Show is GearXS.com. And if you like what you hear on the show and you want to support the show, this is an easy way to do it. Go over to DanClementsShow.com and click on one of our affiliate marketers. And today I'm highlighting GearXS.com. And they have anything a department store has, they have it in just droves. They have so much of it. And they have good deals. It's good quality items. It's good. A lot of it's name brand items you can get, but it drastically reduced prices. So if you go to the DanClementsShow.com and click on the Gear XS, I'll get that out sooner or later, widget on the page, it'll take you to the portal, through the portal that'll take you over there. It won't cost you any other money. Bookmark that page if you plan on going shopping back there, because every time you buy something there, it adds to my revenue on the show. And I am a capitalist. I'm a free market capitalist, and I do like to make money to support my family. And although, as I tell everybody, I said I'm going to continue to put these shows out for free. It's not going to ever cost you a dime to watch this program on YouTube or listen to it on Blog Talk Radio. All right. Get a shot of coffee here for my throat. Oh, real quick, side note. I make my own coffee creamer. And I tried to make some pumpkin spice coffee creamer yesterday. Went horribly wrong. So I was using spices, and they do not, even after I heated my condensed milk and half that I mixed together to make coffee creamer, it was horrible. And I did not know that they made a liquid extract of pumpkin spice. And they do. So I remade it this morning. I'm having pumpkin spice coffee right now. 2 thumbs up, folks, for pumpkin spice. It's one of those fall things with me. I love flavored coffee. My father-in-law calls it foo-foo coffee, but I like it. He doesn't have to drink it, but I like it. All right, today's daily Bible reading comes from the book of Acts, chapter 3, verses 1 through 6. Now, Peter and John went up together to the temple at the hour of prayer, the 9th hour. And a certain man, lame from his mother's womb, was carried, whom they laid daily at the gate of the temple, which is called Beautiful, to ask alms from those who entered the temple. Who, seeing Peter and John about to go into the temple, he asked for alms. And fixing his eyes on him with John and Peter, said, "Look at us." So he gave them his attention, expecting to receive something from them. Then Peter said, "Silver and gold I do not have, but what I do have I'll give you. In the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, rise up and walk." Peter and John didn't have silver and gold to give out. But the gift that they were given by the indwelling of the Holy Spirit to heal the sick, that's what they had. That's what they gave him. And I'll tell you what, I bet you that man was more appreciative of that gift than he was all the money he'd ever collected from alms from the people going in and out of the temple. Today's quote mail comes from William E. Deal. We need to begin to search for God in our workplaces. God is already there. Make no mistake about it. We have not trained ourselves to see our Creator. And we need to take opportunity whenever we find it, even at work, to talk to people about God. Now, to take up somebody else's time, your employer's time, to talk to people about God, I think is not the proper place to do it. But if someone's interested in it, offering them a time outside of work to sit down and study these things or read the scriptures in the Bible, and maybe they have some questions that they would like the answers to. There's nothing wrong with starting the conversation at work and ending it someplace else. There really isn't. This short Bible lesson is it's not in honor of, but it's because of some news that came out yesterday. Hugh Hefner passed away at age 91. And if you don't know who Hugh Hefner is, and this is, if you don't want your children to know who Hugh Hefner is, I'll give you a 5 count to get them out of the room. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hopefully they were running. Hugh Hefner was the founder of Playboy magazine. And Focus Press had an article yesterday, and I didn't copy it down yesterday. I just copied the URL, and I went to copy the article today, and it's not there. I don't know why they took it down, but they took it down. Not that I'm going to try to find out. Hopefully they put it back up, because I just skimmed over it yesterday, and it looked pretty good. And that'll teach me to actually copy these things down in a Word document and save them. But he was a founder of Playboy, and in recognizing that, I have this article from Focus Press by Scotty Sparks, What Young People Need to Know About Pornography Addiction. And I think this is a really good article. I've read over this before, and I thought, because this is in the news today, one of the problems plaguing our country and Western civilization in general is the scourge of pornography and the ease of access, especially with the World Wide Web. And one of the things I want to say about this real quick is that they have fought the pornography industry, which actually brings in more money than the NFL. They have fought tooth and nail to, when people make suggestions, how to make it easier to filter them out. The one thing that was talked about, and I think it still needs to be done, is they need to be put on their own domain. What do I mean by that? I have the DanClementsShow.com. My email is on ptd.net for my personal email. And I'm talking about the domains like the .coms, the .ets, the .orgs, all these domains. This was years ago, maybe 10 years ago. It was suggested that they create an XXX, which, is X-rated, and the .xxx domain, and at least on the web, if you're a purveyor of pornography and you put that out, you have to go on that domain. You cannot have a .com, .net, anything else other than a XXX domain. And that would make it easier. You can even talk to your internet service providers. It would make it easier for you to tell them that you want that domain. You don't want to see that domain on your feed. And they can do that. They can block that, or they give you the option to block that out. And if you're going through stuff, and I'll just give you a quick story. Years ago, my son was still living at home. I liked the Cleveland Indians. And we were looking for a fan page to see, because we were heading out to Ohio. And I said, wouldn't it be nice if we could stop by and see a game on our way out to my folks' place? So we were trying to find a fan page to see if there was some fans, that give us some information on that. And in our searches, I clicked on one fan page, and here it was a pornography site. That the pornographers had bought that domain name and were using that. And I just couldn't believe it. And this happens all the time. But if they were forced, because I don't think that's, to me that's not a First Amendment issue. And what I mean by this, they're still allowed to put out their pornography. But to make it easier for me to filter it out of my feeds and anybody else's feeds, I don't think that's a First Amendment issue. I think I have the right to have that ability to easily block that. Right now, to tell you the truth, right now, on my network right now that I'm running for the show, I can't put it through my normal adult content filter, Hedge Builders, because it would throttle me down too much. I need what I need for streaming. Okay, I'm just disciplining myself to not use pornography, but it would make it easier that I wouldn't stumble upon it if I could just block it totally. And so maybe someday that'll come through. And some people, well, if you have an opinion, if you listen to the show and you have an opinion about that, let me know. Go to the DanClementsShow.com and go to the contact page and let me know your opinion about blocking pornography or making it easier for folks, parents, to block pornography from their children. But we need to know the truth about the addictiveness of pornography. A lot of people laugh about that, but you can, and it does happen. It's medically proven that you can become chemically addicted to pornography because of viewing pornography cause your body to release endorphins, and those endorphins can become addictive, and that's where the addiction comes from. All right, a couple things I want to get to here first. This was posted on the 28th. This was yesterday. The funeral was held for the lady that was killed down in the Barnett, the Antioch area, the Burnett Chapel, Church of Christ. Melanie Crow, she was laid to rest on the 28th. Crow's 19-year-old daughter said the church was very important to her mother. Her daughter, Brianna Smith, said the night before the shooting, her mom told her God had a plan. Smith wants to send this message to everyone. Don't be afraid to show love to anyone, even strangers, because you don't know what they need. You don't know their future. Smith said maybe if someone showed the shooter love, he wouldn't have done that. And I appreciate what she's saying. I really do. But I don't think that's the total. Just showing somebody love isn't enough. It really isn't. Showing them the truth about things, showing them the truth about who you are, what you believe in, what the truth of the Bible and stuff like that, I think that goes further than just love. Yeah, love's important. It very much is. Our love for lost souls has to be paramount, but it can't be the only thing. Because I can love you all you want, but that doesn't, my loving you, and if I don't ever share the gospel, God's love for you with somebody, they never know. They never know about who God is and what his love is for them. There's another article in here. I just wanted to get into this one. A picture emerges of Tennessee church shooting suspect, and I don't normally use CNN, but they pretty much got this right. I've been looking at some different news, local news down around the Antioch, Tennessee, Nashville area, and they pretty much get this right. So I'll use this the beginning of it. This is by Emmanuel Grinberg and Joe Sterling over at CNS News, but it was posted over at WSMV Channel 4 down around Tennessee. It says, as detectives investigate a deadly church shooting at Burnett Chapel Church of Christ in Antioch, Tennessee, a picture is starting to emerge of accused gunman Emmanuel Sampson. He's a 25-year-old native of Sudan whose Facebook page is populated with gym selfies and bodybuilding poses. He worked as an unarmed security officer and had recently reinstated his license, talking about his gun license. It remains to be seen how he ended up, as police allege, parked in a church lot as Sunday services was ending. In his possession, he had 2 pistols, a tactical vest, and 3 magazines of ammunition, as well as an empty one. In his car, he had an AR-15 rifle. In his case, and a .22 caliber semi-automatic pistol. His last Facebook post was at 10:26 a.m., about 30 minutes before he arrived at the church, according to an affidavit. Everyone you've ever doubted or made to believe as false is real, and vice versa. B. Church members knew him. Sampson is charged with felony homicide and is being held without bond. He is scheduled to appear in court Wednesday, and I believe that would be, well, he's been charged with this past Wednesday. He was charged with the felony homicide, and I think he's supposed to be in court next Wednesday again. Police said he is accused of killing 1 woman and injuring seven more in a shooting spree that ended when a church usher intervened. During the altercation, Sampson accidentally shot himself in the chest with his own weapon, police said. Police say that they are trying to establish his motive. Nashville police said Sampson acknowledged opening fire in the church. He also told officers he had attended the church in the past. Church members confirmed this, telling police he attended the church about 2 years ago, but that they had not seen him in a while. They did not immediately recognize him because the gunman was masked. Some members of the congregation who declined to give their names because they did not want to speak for the church beyond its official statement recalled Samson fondly. They said he was friendly to everyone, including one of the people he allegedly shot. He had mysterious Facebook posts. And it goes on and talks a little bit more about him, and we'll find out more and more about him as the day comes, or as the days go by. But don't hold your breath for the lamestream media to get this out. It was a couple days. Matter of fact, it wasn't until Wednesday or yesterday morning, Wednesday afternoon, Thursday morning, that the lamestream media really got in gear on this. And the first one that I saw talking about this was late on Tuesday, and that was Fox News. And then the Blaze was picking it up, and a couple other outlets from the and even though I consider Fox News part of the Main Street media, I don't consider them part of the lamestream media. Now, do they have some hosts on there that are very biased towards the left? Yes, they do. But as a whole, they recognize that they're conservative bias, and even they even put that out for people. Coming in that they have a conservative bent. They're not like the rest of the lamestream media that hides their bias. Oh, we're just trying to be objective journalists. No, you're not. Everybody has a bias, and if you just were honest about your bias, you'd probably get a lot further in life. So the media ignored this mass shooting, and I have an article in there about this, for a couple days. And the main reason why, and I have an article by Hank Barron posted on September 26th of this year from the Daily Wire, and mainly it's because it doesn't fit their narrative, their leftist anti-freedom narrative. Now, if this would have been, seriously, folks, if this would have been a white man going in there and doing this, it would have been all over the front page of the lamestream media. But it was a man of color, a black man, a Somalian, or Sudanese, excuse me. And it doesn't fit their narrative. Well, how dare this guy do this? And this is the problem when you live and die by narrative. That instead of being objective seekers of the truth, you're living and dying by narrative. And folks, that shouldn't be. I don't live by narrative. I'm not in an echo chamber. I listen to any points of view that are reasonable and that you can back up with facts or proof. Part of the problem, I was watching a Facebook video this morning about this woman, this Latino woman, took a hat off this gentleman. It was on a college campus, his Make America Great hat. They went into the student union, and the guy was saying, hey, you're stealing, that's my property, I bought that, you cannot just take that. Oh, do you know what this hat means? You know what this hat means? It means genocide, mass deportations, all these kind of things, this false narrative that she was adhering to. And we have false narratives around us all the time. And at the end of the video, it was like a 7.5 minute video. At the end of the video, the guy had called the police saying this woman stole his hat. And the police were there waiting for her. And she's like, are you kidding me? And the guy was trying to explain to her, in this country we have freedom of speech. And she goes, you shouldn't have. You shouldn't be able to say this kind of stuff with your hat. And like I said, she was adhering to a false narrative that has been debunked for so long, that Donald Trump's a white supremacist because white supremacists support him. I ran into this with my Facebook antagonist. She wanted to debate me about a show I had on about ethical humanists, and she said 95% of what you said is false. Wouldn't give me any examples, wanted to debate me, wanted to debate every point on the show, and I said, I don't have that type of time on the show. I'm not going to stretch it out over 2 or 3 days. I said, pick your best 4 to 6 or your most, what do you think are my most egregious errors, 4 to 6 points, and we'll debate them on the show. She hasn't got back with me since. I put it in her court, and quite honestly, I don't even think she watched the show. I really don't, and she's not going to. And the reason why I don't think she's going to, because she was spouting this 95% thing. Well, this was something that came out about Snopes, about Donald Trump and his supporters are wrong 95% of the time. And that's been debunked by several different news services, Daily Wire, Daily Signal, a couple other, I think the Washington Free Beacon, debunked Snopes. I don't use Snopes. Snopes is a very anti-freedom fact-checking site, and a lot of people use that, especially those in the anti-freedom groups. And what and I didn't think this was like 2 or 3 weeks between the time I said, pick your 4 to 6 points, and we'll discuss those on this show. I said we'll do it over Skype. She didn't like the idea of doing it over Skype. I said we'll do it like, you want to do it live on my show? We'll do it live on my show. I said I can go up to 2 hours on my show if you want. And I said, but pick 4 to 6 points, because we're not. I said to do every point that I brought a lot of points on that show. We don't have enough time. And so again, I don't think that she did, because it just was real suspicious. She used the same terminology, almost word for word, that Snopes did. And they live in, folks, anti-freedom folks live in their echo chambers. And the fact that this church shooting was black on white, and honestly, I don't care. I'm just giving you facts. It wasn't that they were white people and he was going after white people. He was intent on shooting somebody, and that was a target of opportunity. That was a target of opportunity. And there's, like I said, there's definitely a narrative going out there. And the reason why most of the liberal media out there, the mainstream media, isn't reporting it is because it does not fit their narrative at all, period. Now let me get this this article up here real quick. I want to get to this one, and then I have a couple others I want to get to also. Let me put this up. Now, let me get over here. This is an article by Walter E. Williams, and this is posted on LouRockwell.com. Now, Walter E. Williams, he still puts out columns every day. I have to remember which camera I'm looking at. I have it set up where if I'm reading it off my monitor here, then I'm looking more directly into the camera for you. Hopefully that's okay with everybody. The problem, and this is like I said, Walter E. Williams, he's a black American, unashamed about that, unashamed about how he was brought up in a single parent family, and proud of his accomplishments that he wasn't letting people hold him back. He said the problems with today's black Americans are a result of a legacy of slavery, racial discrimination, and poverty that has achieved an axiomatic status, thought to be self-evident and beyond question. This is what academics and civil rights establishments have taught, but as with so much of what's claimed by leftists, there is little evidence to support it. The number one problem among blacks is the effects stemming from a very weak family structure. Children from fatherless homes are likelier to drop out of high school and die by suicide, have behavioral disorders, join gangs, commit crimes, and end up in prison. They are also likelier to live in poverty-stricken households. But is the weak black family a legacy of slavery? In 1960, just 22% of black children were raised in single-parent families. 50 years later, more than 70% of black children were raised in single-parent families. Here's my question. Was the increase in single-parent black families after 1960 a legacy of slavery, or might it be a legacy of the welfare state ushered in by the war on poverty? According to the 1938 Encyclopedia of Social Sciences, that year, 11% of black children were born to unwed mothers. Today, about 75% of black children are born to unwed mothers. Is that supposed to be a delayed response to the legacy of slavery? The bottom line is that the black family was stronger the first 100 years after slavery than during what would be the second 100 years. At one time, almost all black families were poor, regardless of whether one or both parents were present. Today, roughly 30% of blacks are poor. However, two-parent black families are rarely poor. Only 8% of black married couple families live in poverty. Among black families in which both the husband and wife work full-time, the poverty rate is under 5%. Poverty in black families headed by single women is 37%. The undeniable truth is that neither slavery nor Jim Crow nor the harshest racism has decimated the black family the way the welfare state has. Black the black family structure is not only retrogression suffered by blacks in an age of racial enlightenment. In every census from 1890 to 1954, blacks were either just as active as or more so than whites in the labor market. During that earlier period, black teen unemployment was roughly equal to or less than white teen unemployment. As early as 1900, the duration of black unemployment was 15% shorter than that of whites. Today, it's about 30% longer. Would anyone suggest that earlier periods there was less racial discrimination? What goes a long way towards an explanation of yesteryear and today are the various labor laws and regulations promoted by liberals and their union allies that cut off the bottom rungs of the economic ladder and encourage racial discriminations. Labor unions have a long history of discrimination against blacks. Frederick Douglass wrote about this in his 1874 essay titled The Folly, Tyranny, and Wickedness of Labor Unions. And Booker T. Washington Booker T. Washington did so in his 1930 essay titled The Negro and the Labor Unions. To the determinant of their constituents, to the detriment of their constituents, most of today's black politicians give unquestioning support to labor laws pushed by unions and white liberal organizations. Then there's education. Many black 12th graders deal with scientific problems at a level of whites in the 6th grade. They write and do math about as well as white 7th and 8th graders. All of this means that an employer hiring or a college admitting the typical black high school graduate is in effect hiring or admitting an 8th grader. Thus, one should not be surprised by the outcomes. The most damage done to black Americans is inflicted by those politicians, civil rights leaders, and academics who assert that every problem confronting blacks is a result of a legacy of slavery and discrimination. That's a vision that guarantees perpetuity for the problems. And folks, again, here's a man, Walter E. Williams, here's a man that was raised by a single parent who escaped that life, who escaped poverty, didn't want to let that hold him back. And he was married and raised 2 daughters. I don't think he has a son. I think he just has 2 daughters. But raised a family. And beat the odds, as it were. Because as far as I can tell, Walter E. Williams didn't let anybody hold him back. Saw obstacles as challenges, not as obstacles, not as something that will stop you. Obstacles usually mean, and this is from my military training, going through an obstacle course means you got to overcome the obstacle. And the drill sergeants won't let you stop. They want you to overcome that. My biggest fear until I got out of the Navy and started working on construction sites with material lifts and stuff like that was my fear of heights. And they had this one thing in the middle of the obstacle course, and the only thing I had a problem with, I got over it, but I had a huge problem with it, was this tower was like 30 feet off the ground at the top, and there were telephone poles that was like a big ladder, and the higher you went, the further the further the poles got apart. Until you got to the top one, the telephone pole did not go up above the top rung. The top rung made a square. You had to grab a hold of that, swing over that, and come back down on the other side. And that's where I had the problem. I finally did it, but I had a big issue with that because I had no other place to hold on to but that top rung. And that was really scary for me. But that wasn't an obstacle to stop me. That was an obstacle so I could get over it, so I could overcome it. And what's happening in today's society with folks of color or folks who live in poverty, that live on the welfare state, that want to just subsist on the welfare state, are using that to stop them from overcoming the obstacles of poverty. And so I agree with Walter Williams. It's not a legacy of slavery. And that's part of the false narrative with this taking a knee by the NFL, by these players, especially Colin Kaepernick. We live in a society of oppression. You're only oppressed if you allow yourself to be oppressed. When you allow yourself to be oppressed, you give power to the oppressor. And I'm not saying there's no such thing as police brutality in this country, but it is not as widespread as people make it out to be. It really isn't. The only reason why people think it's actually more than what it is because they're 24/7 news cycle, and this is what they prefer to report on. Like I said, with this church shooting, it was a couple days before they picked up the narrative. It was a couple days. Just like the Puerto Rico story. I don't have any links on here. It's all over the news. The Trump administration was working in the background to get things down there. Matter of fact, when the lamestream media was saying that the United States was not helping Puerto Rico or the American Virgin Islands or U.S. Virgin Islands, that was wrong. We have an air base down in Puerto Rico, and they were shipping stuff into the air base. They had personnel going to the air base, and diesel fuel and fuel for generators for the hospital. I was reading some articles over the past couple days about the USS Hope, I believe it is, the Navy hospital ship, the huge hospital ship. And the lamestream media was like, well, why wasn't that dispatched already? They were resupplying the ship. You know, they don't use that ship all the time, and you need fresh medical supplies on board to take care of folks, so they were resupplying the ship before they sent it down there. What good would it have done them to send it down without supplies on the ship? But you didn't hear that narrative from the lamestream media. And if you were in the Navy like I was in the Navy, you have to supply the ship before you can get underway. When we were in a port, our supplies, our stocks were dwindled down. They were left to dwindle down so they could do cleaning in the reefers and the freezers. And a lot of times, especially when we were in the shipyards, the crew complement was eating on base at the base mess hall. And even if we weren't, even if our mess hall was still going, you could go to the base mess hall, but it would cost you to get in there. You could eat for free on the ship, but as long as your galley was open on the ship. But even when we were in port, we were not fully stocked while we were in port because they were getting daily deliveries or every other day deliveries to the ship of food for the galleys to feed the ship and the crew complement. So there are a lot of people jumped on this on Facebook, on Twitter, that were just condemning the Trump administration for not sending that hospital ship down to Puerto Rico, and doing that kind of stuff. And it's like, this stuff, it was ordered, but then, like I said, the captain of that ship says, well, we have to take on supplies. That had to be done. And, they probably have a standard list of supplies they have on there. And some of that didn't need to be replenished, obviously, but there was a lot of medicines and stuff like that has a shelf life, and they have to make sure they have fresh stuff on board so they're not running out. It's on its way down there if it isn't already there. So there was help coming into Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands already, but the lamestream media didn't focus on that. They were focusing on all the negative stuff and not even focusing on exactly what the Trump administration was actually doing for our U.S. territories down in the Caribbean. Again, it doesn't fit their narrative. So if it doesn't fit their narrative, if President Trump is doing something right, they can't report that because it isn't part of their narrative. So my cautionary tale to you is be careful what you listen to on the lamestream media and what they actually put out about that. All right. This is funny. These NFL players, we're talking about police oppression and stuff like that and all these other things. And I was talking in my monologue about the actual sins of the NFL and is this take the knee, the hill you want to die on when they have so much other grievous issues that they, last night on the game, I couldn't believe how these commentators are up there. Well, this guy was hurt. I think the guy's, his name was Holmes, I believe it was, on the Chicago Bears. He got his shoulder stung during the beginning of the fourth quarter, and he came out about 5 or 10 minutes later to come back into the game. And the commentator, Tony Romo, was one of the commentators up there saying, that's going to go a long way. The player's going to see that. The coach is going to see that. He come out and played hurt. And I'm like, really? That's your idea of bravery, that he came out to play hurt? Now, the last time I checked, playing in the NFL is not a life or death situation as far as if you play or not. If you get hurt and you come back and play while you're hurt and you get hurt even more, who's that on? You know, you just took yourself out of, you know, any, you know, future play for a while with your team if you really hurt yourself. Wouldn't you be supporting the team better if you got stung like that and maybe not play? You're in the fourth quarter. Maybe not play so you can keep healthy for your team instead of putting it all in the field in one game. You know, and you know, players do that all the time, folks. But when people, like I said, they're dying on this hill of taking a knee, and the funny thing about it is they're talking about police brutality and stuff like that. Well, there's a lot of NFL players that are having run-ins with the law. There really are. And I don't know, I didn't check. I seen on the news last night, I was trying to find it last night, where there was a San Francisco 49er player arrested because of his, let's see, I don't even know if they have it in here. He was arrested out in, let me see here, 49ers player arrested. Let me see if I can pull something up there. Let me see. No, that's an older story. Anyway, I have an article here by Caitlin Carroll, posted on September 26th over at the Washington Free Beacon. Several NFL players who protested National Anthem Sunday have arrest records. Let me see here. I'm just going to go down through here and give you some of these guys, right? The Jacksonville Jaguar defensive end Dante Fowler, he was arrested for battery and assault in two separate incidents in July 2017 and March 2016, respectively. Baltimore Ravens outside linebacker Terrell Suggs for aggressive assault in March 2003 and leaving the scene of an accident and driving with a suspended license in March 2016. New Orleans Saints running back Adrian Peterson for injury to a child in September of 2014. That's domestic violence, and he's still playing. He's still playing, folks. That stuff, there wasn't anything hardly done about that, if you remember those stories. Kansas City Chief tight end Demetrius Harris for felony marijuana possession in March of 2017. Pittsburgh Steelers running back Le'Veon Bell for marijuana possession back in August 2014. Buffalo Bills defensive tackle Marcel Darius for felony drug possession and reckless endangerment behind the wheel in two separate incidents in March 2014. And folks, look at some of these charges. Reckless endangerment behind the wheel. That's a lesser charge from driving under the influence. And again, I wonder if we would get the same treatment because we're not famous. Because we're not famous. All right, let me get over to. I actually have this. I forgot I had this pulled up on here. Let's see, where was I at? Buffalo Bills. Okay. Seattle Seahawks practice quarterback Trevon Boykin for marijuana possession and violating probation in March 2017 and April 2017, respectively. Baltimore Ravens linebacker, former linebacker Ray Lewis for murder in January 2000. He ultimately testified in the case and received 1 year of probation and a $250,000 fine from the NFL for murder, folks, for murder. New Orleans Saints defensive end Alex Okafor for evading arrest and running from the scene after police tried to detain him in March 2015. Tennessee Titans outside linebacker Derek Morgan for speeding and driving with suspended license in June 2010. Pittsburgh Steelers cornerback Artie Burns for driving with a suspended license in June 2017. These guys know they have to go get their license renewed, or if it was suspended for something else. Usually they say suspended license because they lost it doing something else. Denver Broncos outside corner or linebacker Von Miller for failure to appear in court on previous traffic charges, including careless driving and driving without a license in August 2013, decided for driving with a suspended license in September 2013. These arrest records only touch on past run-ins that protesting NFL players have had with law enforcement. Trump's comments criticizing players who kneel for the national anthem appears to have triggered Sunday's spike in those joining the protest. At a campaign rally for Alabama Senator Luther Strange on Friday, Trump called for the NFL owners to get out, to fire these folks. I won't finish the rest of that. And this is just only a partial list, folks. And this is what I was saying about these guys. Bigger sins. Here we have, and I remember Charles Barkley, and I think he's correct in this. He says, "I'm not an idol to be mimicked. I'm not I'm at a loss for words here about what Charles Barkley actually said. But these kids look up to a hero. I'm not a hero for these kids. They need to look up to their moms and dads, family members and stuff like that. And I agree with him. That should be what's happening with the youth of America, is actually looking up at look up to folks as heroes that can help them. And I'm not saying, I think Charles Barkley is a man of character, and I think he's a straight shooter, and he's someone to be admired. And I think he is someone to be looked up to. But he can't, if that's the only person you're looking up to, I think you have a very narrow focus in life. But there's a lot of these players that these kids look up to and try to emulate them, and they really shouldn't, because they don't deserve the adoration. Because there's some bad people in the NFL. Driving around suspended license. What'd you get your license suspended for? And they didn't even touch that's only people that knelt. If they really got into like the domestic violence and the drug abuse and really aired that, you don't see that at all. I rarely ever see stories about that, or even exposés about the rampant drug and alcohol abuse in the NFL and domestic and other type of violence outside of the game. Folks, again, those are the hills to die on. If you're not going to watch an NFL, those are the reasons why you shouldn't be watching the NFL. Not something that has something to do with free speech, although inappropriate where it's taking place, because you're using somebody else's dime for that. You really are. All right, let's see where I want to get into here today. Oh, by the way, please give me your comments on my camera angles and stuff like that. I know I'm just a handsome dude. I'm growing my beard already. The first day of fall was last Friday, and this is only a week's worth of growth. I'm not real hairy. It takes me a long time to get a beard going, but I am kind of a handsome dude profile and everything like that. Let me know what you think about the new camera angles. Go to the DanClementsShow.com and leave a message over there on my go to the contact page, and it'll send it to me in an email. Just let me know what you think. Now, another drink coffee here, folks. That, by the way, is a 24-ounce coffee that I'm drinking there. All right. Here's another one. Let me get this set up. We're going to change gears. We're going to try to get off sports here for a little bit. Now, Jimmy Kimmel. Let me make a comment first about the late night shows now. They're on TV. Jimmy Kimmel, Colbert, and some of these other clowns, right? Used to be when you watched David Letterman, even though I didn't like him, he was funny. Jay Leno, Johnny Carson, some of these other guys that were on the late shows, they were very funny. But now it just seems like it's not about comedy anymore. It's about political satire. It's not even satire anymore. It's actually, these guys on the late night show are very much in the pocket of Hollywood liberals and the Hollywood elitists and stuff like that. And they want to run in these circles. Now, Jimmy Kimmel, he's on the, let's see here. I'm just looking. I don't watch, and even when Jay Leno and Letterman were on, I watched them very seldomly because that just wasn't my cup of tea. But Jimmy Kimmel, I think he's on The Tonight Show. Anyway, whatever show he's on, Jimmy Kimmel praised 5 countries' healthcare systems. Here are some problems with them. Now, Jimmy Kimmel had a son that was born to him and had a a heart problem that needed to be fixed. It was done at the Children's Hospital in Los Angeles. That's a charity hospital, and the reason why I know this is because Ben Shapiro's wife, who's a doctor, cycles in and out of there. Okay, she takes her turn working in there, and so Jimmy Kimmel has been really an advocate for Obamacare. And yet Obamacare doesn't affect him because Jimmy Kimmel is a multimillionaire. And even if he didn't have insurance and he needed to get something done for his child, he would have the wherewithal to do so. I'm not saying that disqualifies him from saying anything about it. Don't take me wrong here. But what I'm saying is that the Jimmy Kimmel, I think he's coming about it from a wrong way. And he doesn't have to live under Obamacare like I do. I'll just use myself because, I'm the best example for me. He doesn't have to live with the higher premiums that Obamacare has caused. He doesn't have to live with the idea that the individual market has been destroyed. I can't go out and get an individual policy for myself anymore. He doesn't have to live with the idea of the higher premiums and higher deductibles that Obamacare has caused, that the free market would actually fix. Okay, he's a Hollywood leftist. He's part of what I call the anti-freedom groups out there. And I'll just read through this. This is by Hank Berian over at dailywire.com, posted on the 20th of September this month. Jimmy Kimmel, take note. Your statement on Tuesday night, somehow Japan and England and Canada and Germany, France, they have all figured healthcare out, and don't say they have terrible health care because it's just not true, might bear some contemplation. Here's some indications that health care in the countries Kimmel lauded might not be the bed of roses he posits. And this is the problem. I'm going to stop reading here. This is the problem. They point to these countries as the model for this health care, but they don't tell you how much the country actually spends on it, which is far more than if we had a free market system would actually spend on health care and actually get better health care. Japan. McKinsey.com reported regarding Japan in 2009, the conspicuous absence of a way to allocate medical resources, starting with doctors, makes it harder and harder for patients to get the care they need, when and where they need it. A vivid example, Japan's emergency rooms, which every year turn away tens of thousands who need care. Furthermore, the quality of care varies markedly, and many cost control measures implemented have actually damaged the system's cost effectiveness. Meanwhile, demand for care keeps rising. Japan Times added in February 2017, its rapidly aging society and shrinking ranks of premium paying workers, coupled with the arrival of new drugs and technologies fetching phenomenal prices, are putting immense strains on the system, experts say, making it substantially uncertain, or sustainability uncertain. Now, the one thing I want to say about the emergency rooms, and I've read this before, the reason why they're turning so many people away, it's not that they're turning people away. The emergency rooms are so full, people are just choosing not to wait to get in there. It's not that they're turning them away. They can't see them all. They cannot see them all. Great Britain. As the Daily Telegraph reported in July 6, 2017, 1 million patients a week cannot get appointments with general practitioners amid the longest waiting times on record, new figures show. Doctors said they were working flat out but under unsustainable pressures, leaving worrying numbers of patients without any help. The NHS figures show the number waiting at least a week to see their general practitioner has risen by 56% in 5 years, with 1 in 5 now waiting this long. The pressures left 11.3% of patients unable to get an appointment at all, a 27% rise since 2012. This amounts to around 47 million occasions on which patients attempted but failed to secure help from their general practitioner, forcing them to give up. Later, try again later, or turn to accident emergency departments. Emergency rooms, in other words, folks. Canada. More than 1.5 million Ontarians, or 12% of that province's population, can't find family physicians, reported City Journal in 2007. In 2017, Ottawa Citizens reported the U.S.-based Commonwealth Fund, in conjunction with the Canadian Institute of Health Information, just published the results of its health policy survey of adults in Australia, Canada, France, Germany, the Netherlands, New Zealand, Norway, Sweden, Switzerland, the United Kingdom, and the United States. The results indicated that Canada is not just lagging, but is literally scraping the bottom when it comes to indicators of timely access to health care. Here's a sample of our most spectacular failures. Ability to get a same or next day appointment when sick, worst. Ability to get after hours care without resorting to visiting emergency department, second worst. Wait for treatment in emergency room department, worst. Wait to see a specialist, worst. Wait to receive surgery, worst. Germany, even left-wing political, admitted in October 2016, drug makers are pulling diabetes drugs from Germany, blaming government-set prices that don't let them recoup their investment. And health insurance rates charged by the Krankenkassen are 14.6% plus 1.1% medium supplemental premiums of a German's monthly salary. And lastly, France. Bloomberg reported in 2013 the French government says the health system will fall 5.1 billion euros short in 2013. In 2014, a study published in Health Research Policy and Systems stated bluntly, major political issues remain unresolved. These include the shortages of physicians and expensive equipment such as MRI and the unavailability of emergency services in many rural areas. And folks, this is what we have to work with all these liberals out there. Not Let America Vote, Indivisible Guide and Common Cause that are George Soros supported groups out there. They're lying to people about the health care. They want any bill that the Republicans put forth as a replacement for Obamacare, they want to kill. And my advice to our congressmen, and I've said so to Lou Barletta and our two senators in the state, is stop trying to replace the dumb thing. Repeal Obamacare, take care of the portability issues, that I can buy health insurance across state lines, and let the free market work everything else out. Most states, and I talked about this months ago on the show, the state of Pennsylvania has laws on the books that are still on there, even though Obamacare is in force, that prevents insurance companies from disqualifying somebody because of pre-existing conditions. Now, there's a waiting period for the person. If I have diabetes, that's a pre-existing condition. If I got health insurance in an individual market, I have to wait 6 months before my insurance company would actually cover that. To me, that's acceptable. And that way, and my premiums might be a little bit higher. Okay, that's acceptable too. And if I want to get around that, if I got rid of the portability issues, I could become a member of the, the online radio show association or whatever association I want to be a part of, and get group insurance through an association like that. But the idea that the government can do health insurance and health care better than the free markets is a joke. Those 5 companies or countries that Jimmy Kimmel praised are all failing. Jimmy Kimmel doesn't have to worry about it. Jimmy Kimmel has plenty of money. He doesn't have to worry about the cost of health care. Even if he quit working the day and cut back his lifestyle where, he'd only have to live on, thousands of dollars, let's say, I'm just saying, $50,000 a year, okay? He has no other expenses. And with his millions he should have in the bank, he still wouldn't have to worry about it. So what makes me laugh is these people out there follow these entertainers. That's all Jimmy Kimmel is, and a lot of these other late night talk show hosts, a lot of these talking heads like on The View and stuff like that. They're just entertainers. And just because they're recognizable and quote unquote famous, I think some of them are infamous because of their ideas and stuff. The problem I see is too many people revere these folks' opinions just because they're famous, and they don't go do the research themselves. And again, we're in this mentality, and this is a dangerous mentality we have in this country. This is a socialist/communist mentality that's gaining traction in this country, that the government should be the end all, the be all to our existence. And the problem with that idea is There's a lot of folks here in the United States that think the same way as I do. The smaller the government, the better. The more freedom and liberties we have and that are protected from governmental abuses and abuses by other citizens, I think the better off our country's going to be. And just because I think Bernie Sanders is totally ignorant and wrong about this, that he says we're lagging behind all these other, and they're socialistic countries, folks. They are leaning far more socialist than America is, although we're catching up slowly. He says we're lagging behind these folks, and we should get caught up to them. And he is totally 100% wrong. And the reason why he is, we should be leading by example. We should be showing these other countries this is what happens when you take the healthcare system, insurance, and the care out of the hands of the government, put it in the free market, put it in the customer's hands, and watch that baby grow. Watch prices fall, watch prices for service fall, watch premiums fall, watch deductibles falls, all because of competition. We should be setting the example of freedom and liberty to these other countries. And the problem is the Bernie Sanders type, the social democrats that support Bernie Sanders, they don't have a clue. They like the idea, hey, let's get this free stuff. And why wouldn't Bernie Sanders like that? He's never held a job in his life. Never held a job in his life. Why wouldn't he like free stuff from the government? And folks, I think as parents, we've fallen down on the job of raising our children with a work ethic. My buddy Dave said, boy, we could do a whole show of him just talking about millennials in the workplace. I think we could probably fill up a week worth of shows talking to entrepreneurs out there that have to hire millennials for the workplace. It's terrible. The situation out there is terrible. And it's only going to get worse if we don't start training our children up in the way they should go. If we want independent children that are able to enter the workforce and be able to do a good day's work for a good day's pay, or an honest day's work for an honest day pay, however you want to phrase it, we need to raise them up that way. I raised my son up that way. And it does kind of surprise me because it doesn't really surprise me a lot. He's in a union. And a union, and union members hate it when I make this comparison. Remember a country used to be called the Soviet Union? Well, unions in the United States are the last organized bastion, public, everybody sees them because they're very boisterous, of communism in this country. The unions are communistic. They just are. That's the way they're organized. That's their ideology, and that's their philosophy. And it's no wonder why my son's his intellect's being poisoned by the ideas of communism, because he works in a communistic system that goes around and says corporations are bad to the bone, that they're making all these profits and we're not getting it, and it's our labor that's actually making them profitable. And that's to a certain extent is true, but it's not the end-all to be-all the argument. If it wasn't for somebody's investments into the railroad to create the railroad and get it working and stuff like that, capital investments, which workers can't do because they don't make enough money, you wouldn't have a job to make the money. Their idea is communistic to the extreme, And Jimmy Kimmel is no different. He's one of these social democrats out there that believes that the government is the end-all to be-all to existence, and our country was just not founded on those principles. Our republic was not designed to work that way. Our republic was designed to let the people, and not even let the people, to guard the freedoms and liberties the people already had before any of the governments on this continent were put in place. And that leads me into my next story. And this one, folks, Chuck Todd. How does Chuck Todd even have a job? To be quite honest with you, how in the world does he even have a job left? This guy, folks, people can't be that stupid. Not by accident. It has to be on purpose. It really does. Here's the thing. Judge Roy Moore, he won the Republican primary to run against a Democrat in the special election in December to replace Jeff Sessions in the Senate. Roy Moore doesn't believe in the Constitution because he thinks rights come from God. This is by Alex Griswold over to Washington Free Beacon, posted on September 27th. This is the video of Chuck Todd This is the video of Chuck Todd, okay? Give this a listen here, folks.
Roy Moore, where the phrase "I'll be your next U.S. Senator." If you don't understand...
Folks, let me start that over again. I thought I had everything shut off on that, and I didn't. Let me start that over. Here you go.
Roy Moore, where the phrase Christian conservative doesn't even begin to describe him, could very well be your next U.S. Senator. If you don't understand just how freaked out some folks in the GOP and the White House are about what that means, then you don't know Roy Moore. First off, he doesn't appear to believe in the Constitution as it's written.
Our rights don't come from government. They don't come from a Bill of Rights. They come from Almighty God.
Now, that's just a taste of what are very fundamentalist views that have gotten him removed from office twice as Alabama's Chief Justice.
Oh, what the heck? Sorry about that, folks. I thought I had that taken care of the other day, and I guess I don't. For some reason, that shouldn't be feeding back like that. But anyway, we'll go on there. Chuck Todd. MSNBC host Chuck Todd said Wednesday that Republican Alabama senatorial candidate Roy Moore does not believe in the U.S. Constitution because he believes in God-given rights. Todd, introducing his discussion of the former Alabama Chief Justice, said that the phrase Christian conservative doesn't even begin to describe him. First off, he doesn't appear to believe in the Constitution as it's written, Todd said. Honestly, I don't think Chuck Todd knows what the Constitution is, let alone have read it and understood it. Okay? Well, he then played a clip of Moore saying, our rights don't come from the government, they don't come from the Bill of Rights, they come from Almighty God. Then Chuck Todd said, those are just a taste of what are very fundamentalist views that have gotten him removed from office twice as Alabama Chief Justice, Todd said. And it wasn't the views per se, it was his stance on the Ten Commandments and that he was going against the federal government and the Obama administration. The Obama administration was one behind getting him removed, okay? And so this Chuck Todd, honestly, I don't think you can be that ignorant by accident. You have to be that ignorant on purpose. Moore's views are actually well in line with the philosophy of many of the founders as they saw it. As the Constitution and the government only protected inalienable rights that were endowed by God and some other divine providence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, and he goes on down through the article here. The point I want to make about this, folks, is Chuck Todd doesn't have a clue. Chuck Todd, and there's a lot of folks out in the country, folks, a lot of Americans that are ignorant of this fact, that the government does not give us our rights. Our rights do not derive from the government. Governments are instituted to protect our rights according to the Declaration of Independence and the Committee of Five who wrote that. And also in the Declaration of Independence, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Our rights that we have, and I know this is kind of radical to Chuck Todd, but our rights have always preceded governments. Human rights, the rights of mankind, were always there. If God gave them to us, and I believe that to be true, or even, folks, even if you want to take it out of the realm of religion and are like a naturalist form, human beings have always been around, whether you believe in creation or evolution, they've always been around well before government, and they had these rights well before governments were established. So our rights can't come from the government. They can't come from the Bill of Rights. They're only protected. The only reason why the Bill of Rights is in there is to protect our rights. And I dare say not only from the federal government, but the state government, from local governments, and from other individuals that want to take away our rights. That video I alluded to in my monologue, the Facebook video where this young Latino woman on campus stole this Make America Great Again hat from this other student. And it was ridiculous. She didn't believe in her rights. She didn't believe in freedom of speech. Shouldn't have it if you're going to promote genocide, which she was coming from an ignorant, ill-informed narrative that she was at. And the same way with Chuck Todd. He has no clue about the Constitution. Those comments, Roy Moore doesn't believe in the Constitution because he thinks rights come from God. He would be absolutely right. Judge Moore would be absolutely right. And Chuck Todd is absolutely 100% wrong. And how in the... Don't these guys and girls that are in the lamestream media, especially on TV, don't they have to pass some type of intelligence test before they get on and start spouting things? Shouldn't they know exactly what they're talking about? I mean, it's so easy to go back to the Declaration of Independence and read that and understand the first parts of it, the first few paragraphs of it. Thomas Jefferson, who was part of the Committee of Five, got it absolutely right, that we are endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. Our rights precede government. Our rights come before government, and they are given to us by God. I'm a Christian. I believe in creation. I believe in God. I believe God's Bible and is His Word, His inerrant Word. There's no contradictions in it. Matter of fact, the Bible, as far as my research has taken me, it's the only religious book in the history of the world that actually gives researchable, verifiable evidence within its pages that it is God's Word. Because He gives information to man before man ever figured this stuff out. You know, it's not a history, it is to a certain extent a history book, but whenever it cites history, it's totally accurate. It's not a medical book, but when it recites medical things like cleansing and stuff in the temple with the hyssop and the ashes of a heifer, it's 100% accurate. It's not an archaeological book, but when it talks about ancient civilizations within its pages, it's totally accurate. And just on and on and on, all the examples of how authors of the books could not have known the information that was written down their pages unless somebody that had that knowledge gave that to them. Isaiah, that the sphere of the world sits on nothing. How did Isaiah know that the earth was round? The idea was flat earth way back then. And guys like Copernicus, who figured out the circumference of the world, knew that it was round. It wasn't flat, knew that it was round. How did he know? You know, Magellan, the highways of the passages of the deep and the oceans. It's talking about the currents. Well, Magellan, how did he know that? Well, he was reading scriptures and it talked about the pathways of the seas. And Magellan found out about them by sailing. Here the Bible said it. Man discovered that the Bible was absolutely right. Go back and study Magellan. Again, too many people put too much confidence in these commentators, these news commentators of today. I never say anything that I can't back up, I can't give you references to, that if you ask me, if I don't have them in my show notes page, if you ask me, I'll give you the references I'm talking about. Couple more things here real quick. Along with the NFL, there are bills being introduced, and they're working their way through Congress right now. Senate will come back into session next week to defund with taxpayer dollars on the federal level the NFL. And I think there's so much momentum. I think if there's a good thing to come out of this take the knee controversy here, is that we're going to defund the NFL and not allow taxpayer dollars to be spent in the NFL. And that includes the Department of Defense and promoting this false patriotism that they're promoting in the stands. Kingsman 2. It's out in theaters right now. The Kingsman 2 director has, let me get over here real quick so I can get his name. I got just a little bit of time here. Let's see, his last name's Vaughn. Matthew Vaughn, director of Kingsman 2, admits to editing out anti-Trump scenes for ticket sales. This is by Daily Wire, Paul Boyes, posted on September 27th. Here's a man, and he says in this article here, he didn't want to alienate 50% of his ticket holders with that. This man understands the free markets. He really does. And the fact of the matter that they're in there, okay, some people might take umbrage to that. What do you expect from Hollywood leftists? But he knew who butters his bread. You don't bite the hand that feeds you because it could turn around and slap you, just like it's happening in the NFL now. Boy, that hour and a half went by real fast, folks. I can't believe it. Folks, it's been an honor and a privilege to be with you this week. That's the music. It's the end of the show, fear not. I'll be back with you Monday at 12 noon for the next episode of the Dan Clements Show. This has been the Dan Clements Show. I'm your host, Dan Clements, your constitutional warrior. Remember, if you aim at nothing, you hit it every time. And folks, have a great rest of the day. Have a blessed weekend. And remember on Sunday to attend the church of God's choice, not your choice. God bless, and we'll see you later.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.